What is up, YouTube? My name is Apple, and in this video, we are going to be talking about Aperture, what it is, what it does, and why you need to understand it to make your images much more impactful. All of this is coming up next. Let's get into it. All right, let's not waste any time. Let's get straight into it. What is your aperture? So your aperture is the hole inside of the camera's lens, or the hole inside of the lens that allows light to pass through and hit your camera sensor. The larger the opening in the lens, the more light that passes through. The smaller the opening in the lens, the less light passes through. The size of the hole is represented by F numbers, or what you'll hear most commonly is F stops. Common F stops, F1.8, F1.4, that's a really large one. F2.8, F4, F8, F11, F16, and so on. The other job that your aperture has is it determines how deep the depth of focus or depth of field that your image will have. So the smaller the aperture, the deeper the depth of focus. The larger the aperture, the shallower the depth of focus. This is where it's going to get a little bit, I guess, counterintuitive. The larger the aperture, the smaller the F number. So you've got F1.8, that's a wide open aperture. It's letting a ton of light through, very shallow depth of field. And then if you stop it down to one of the really small apertures, you're talking about F16, F22, you're gonna have a really, really tiny hole in your camera lens, but you're also gonna have that deep, deep depth of focus. All of your images are gonna be in focus unless you've got a specific situation where it's hard to get everything in focus, and that's a different subject for a different video. Now, let's take a look at what the actual aperture looks like inside of the camera lens, and I'm going to walk you through. I'm going to use this lens here. Actually, I'm going to use the 35mm f1.4 so we can see very, very large aperture all the way down to very, very small aperture, what it looks like. Let's do it. All right, so this is a 35mm f1.4 lens. You're looking at the aperture, and it is stopped all the way down at f16. And I'm going to open it up slowly so you can see what it looks like as you open the aperture up. So this is, again, f16, this is f14, f13, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, it's actually 7.1, 6.3, 5.6, 5, f4.5, f4, f3.5, f3.2, f2.8, 2.5, 2.2, 2, f1.8, f1.6, and that is all the way f1.4 super wide aperture. It's crazy. I could do this all day. Look at this all day. Yeah, I don't know why I did that, sorry. I also don't know why I'm whispering. So now you know what the aperture is, how it works, what it does. Let's get out of the office. Let's get outside, out of this little studio here, and let's go look at some actual scenarios as to when you would use a small aperture versus a really large aperture, or maybe even, an aperture in between. So you can kind of understand why it is you want to know what the aperture does and how it works. Let's do it. All right, so we are in my garage, and it's a travesty. I cannot lie, but that's why I'm using it, to give you guys this example. So, and I gotta be quiet. Forgive me if it's a little muffled, because if my wife saw me showing you guys the garage, she'd kill me. She wouldn't kill me, but I'd be in deep poop. So, large aperture, shallow depth of field. You know, so for photography, this is, they usually use a very, very large aperture to isolate and separate the subject that they're taking a picture of. For me, I'm using this because I wouldn't want anybody to see this disaster zone behind me. For film, they use a very, very large aperture, shallow depth of field to, again, same thing as photography or my scenario here, separate the subject from the rest of the frame to put an emphasis on, you know, whether it be a climactic point of devastation, anxiety, sadness, or, I mean, even fear.
Hey, what are you doing in there?
They can't see it. It's a large aperture. It's a 1.4. They can't see anything. What, baby? Where'd you get a gun from? No, baby.
1311, come in. 1343, stopping the vehicle, Central and 40th Place. Danielle 30's behind the unit.
So this place is gorgeous, isn't it? This is something else. I'm just kidding. You can't see jack behind me. I'm at F14, bokeh out of the wazoo, but you can't see anything but my ugly mug. So this is the scenario where you would want to stop down and have a deep depth of focus. This place is too beautiful. Too beautiful, I say. I'm gonna stop down the aperture on this lens and show you the difference. You definitely don't want an f1.4 aperture separating your subject from this type of background. Yes, bokeh out of the wazoo is, that's what everybody loves, but there's always a time and a place for everything. And in a location like this, setting like this, you want to stop down, make sure you got plenty of light so that your audience or whoever you're trying to show the images to can see where you're at. I love this place. I'm sorry you got the water making noise in the background, but this is the best place to sit, I think.
Subscribe now.
What in the hell? Man, who knew my ADHD would follow me all the way that far into a damn dream? Aperture's on the back burner. For sure. We'll start with the old shutter speed. If you enjoyed that video, hop down there and give it the old thumbs up, the likey like. Do consider subscribing, and if you want to know when the next video drops, make sure you hit the bell notification. If you should have any comments or have any questions, definitely drop them down below. I'll be hanging out down there. And until next time, ta-ta.
No.